It's a beautiful day out here. Sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors. Come on, that's it. Let's go.
In Fairfield County, something new comes across my desk every day. Crimes are committed, cases are solved, and a community is made safe by the hardworking employees of the Fairfield County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to This Week with Sheriff Dave Phelan, a weekly program here on LSN Television. We're also carried by a number of the radio affiliates here in Lancaster and beyond. Do appreciate you, the viewers and listeners that join us each and every week. The show is actually produced at Fairfield Christian Academy. The students here do a terrific job. Our executive producer is Kelly Roberts, lines up the guests, gets the questions together, and does a super job every single week. We got a great guest coming up for the next 2 weeks. We got Fire Chief Dave Ward, Lancaster Fire Department, and welcome.
Thank you. One of the many Daves in the county.
Well, we do have a lot. Who do we have? Dave Bailey, the chief. You.
The mayor. Dave Fay.
Dave Trimmer.
Dave Trimmer.
Yeah.
Dave Landfeld.
Dave Levacy.
Dave Levacy. There's a lot of Daves out there.
Yeah, we could start a group or something.
We
kind of a fraternity there or something.
Absolutely.
Well, lots of things going on. Christmas coming up.
Yes.
First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, Chief.
Well, I'm a Fairfield County resident, born and raised. I live out in Amanda. I graduated from Amanda in 1982, went to Ohio University, moved back after college, worked in industrial sales for a few years, and was very fortunate to get back into Lancaster. In 1989, I took both the police and fire test.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I could be sitting here and you'd be the police chief.
By one day. I received a call from the fire chief, Wilbur Welch, at the time, and he offered me the job, and I accepted. My college roommate's father was a Columbus lieutenant, so that was the only exposure I had to firefighting.
Now, what was his name?
His name was Chuck Sherfy.
Okay.
And so I accepted, and then the next day, the Lancaster police called and said, "Hey, you did real well on the test. How would you like to be a police officer?" And I said, I'm a firefighter now. So by one day.
I had a very similar situation. My son-in-law, who was a Columbus firefighter, was the same thing. He took the police test, he took the fire test, and he kind of was batting it around, but he ended up being a fireman.
And it's been a great career. I go to church here in Lancaster at Maple Street United Methodist.
Right.
And so as I worked my way up through the ranks, being on the medic, you go on a lot of runs where you might know the citizen, and so it's home.
Right.
And I've been very blessed to have this job. It's been great. The community's been great, and it's been a great career.
I'm often surprised when occasionally we have lunch or something like that, or just out and about, how many people you know in this community. Mm-hmm. I mean, even before we had the show, you knew some of the students here at the Fairfield Christian Academy.
Yeah, it's just home. My wife is a teacher. She's taught for Lancaster City Schools at Cedar Heights for, this is her 28th year.
Oh my gosh.
So going to church in town here, and everything we do is in Lancaster. So we do know a lot of people. This is home.
Now, do the wards have any Christmas traditions?
Not really. The wards, actually, I'm the only ward, my son and I. My father came from West Virginia. He's passed on, but as far as the wards, we were, just like everybody else, we go to church on Christmas Eve and we have our meal and then we open our gifts and just your traditional Christmas.
Yeah, I often mention this. I have a grandmother. It was my dad's mother, and she lived to be 97 years old. And every Christmas Eve, from the time I was born until the time she passed away, we spent Christmas Eve at Grandma's house. Mm-hmm. And it was down in Johnstown, Ohio, near Lynn's Fruit Farm. Okay. And it was kind of like the Currier and Ives, kind of had the old farmhouse there with the barn. And we'd go up to Grandma's house. And boy, I've got some fond memories of those days.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Now, we've got Christmas coming up.
Yes.
And with Christmas comes some concerns, at least from the fire service, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is becoming our busy time of the year traditionally. With Christmas, you have the trees, you have the the Christmas lights, you have cooking, you have candles, you have just a lot of things that could expose you to an unwanted fire. So it does become a little bit busy for us. In fact, as we were walking into the studio, we had a working house fire on the west side. So as we were just preparing here, I heard that it was contained and hopefully no one was hurt. So it gets busy.
Well, what's the largest or the biggest cause of fires?
Cooking fires is by and large, I think, almost 50% of all the fires are cooking fires.
Okay.
And it's just probably lack of attention. On a cooking fire, you're in the kitchen, you get busy, you walk away from, say, maybe you're cooking or deep frying fish or whatever it might be. You get busy, the temperature gets too hot, it catches on fire. People try to extinguish it or take it outside inappropriately, and so it just seems to expand from there.
So what would be, you're in the kitchen, you're cooking, you start a fire there. What do folks need to do?
Well, first off, don't try to carry it out. Now, if it's a grease fire, you don't want to carry it out. If you can put a lid over top of the pan, the skillet, whatever, that's the best.
Okay.
And so you don't want to carry it. You have a chance to spread it, or you never want to throw water on a grease fire. That will just splatter the grease and extend the fire. So call 911. Make sure everybody's out.
Okay.
Those are the first things you want to do.
Okay.
Close the door behind you if you can.
How important it is to have a fire extinguisher? I have one out in the garage. Mm-hmm. Is that a good thing to have?
Everybody should have at least one extinguisher somewhere.
Okay.
A multi-purpose, multi-use extinguisher in your kitchen is very good.
And how often do you want to replace those or make sure you check them?
Annually.
Okay.
When we do go out to the businesses in town, and we don't inspect residentials, but on the businesses, they have to have a certified inspector. Then there's a couple companies in town that go out and they check the content, make sure it's up, that it's still pressurized, that the hoses are okay, not plugged, etc. So annually with your extinguishers.
Now, the other thing I think around the Christmas season is people will put a lot of candles out. Mm-hmm. And before airtime, you just told me just a tragic story a few years ago here in Lancaster where someone had candles.
Yes, in fact, it was in Columbus, and it was one of my relatives. Okay. And it's probably been 10, maybe. Time goes fast, but I just became a firefighter, and it was in Columbus, and she was a single mother, and had candles burning, and the candles, the window was open. I think the chiffon or some kind of drapes blew into the candles, and she had two small children. Both of them were below probably the age of 3 or 4, and they didn't make it out. So She had lost both her children, and it's devastating. So candles have seen a huge boom. Past the religious, churches are allowed to use candles, but with the aromatic smells and scents, people use those for a lot of different things now, and so they have them everywhere. And they're great,
right.
But you have to use a lot of common sense. For example, you want to make sure when you set out a candle that it's not close to something that can catch fire. We say 3 feet, but and never put it in a window or someplace where something can blow into it. You want to make sure that it's on a sturdy surface. And I know at my house sometimes you can remember placing a tall candle in one of those and you're pushing it down because it wants to lean over.
Right.
Well, we suggest that you have some kind of a holder that's deep so that it doesn't, if it were to fall over or melt over, it would not fall into something and catch fire.
Well, that's good information, because a lot of times you look at those candles and there's that much distance to get them down into the thing, and like you said.
And that's good. We ask that you trim your wick by 1/4 inch. When it gets down low, just dispose of it.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And children, never let children be around candles or play with candles. Don't put candles in a child's room. That's it's good common sense, but those things can happen. It can happen fast.
Now, as Christmas approaches, again before airtime, I got some information from you, and Loretta and I have been getting the house fixed, and we've got everything up. We decorated the tree, and we have an artificial tree.
Okay.
And so Loretta says, I think we ought to turn that off at night. And I said, well, I don't really. It's an artificial tree. We got the lights. I said, well, we can just leave it on. We don't have to do that every day and night. But I was mistaken, right? Turn that off.
Turn them off.
Okay.
Yeah. Ask Loretta if she'd like to have a firefighter job. Just give us a call because she's exactly right.
Okay.
Even with appliances, can openers, toasters, and things, pull that plug. But with
that's interesting.
Yeah, just pull them out. It's simple. But with lights, yes, when you go to bed, you go away for the night for a little while, you unplug those.
Okay.
You just don't know what's going to happen.
Now, what about extension cords? Because you see, they've got the extension cords throughout the living room. They're running
Right.
the candles in the windows and all that stuff.
People do a lot of things with extension cords. They'll daisy chain those, where they'll put one to the next, to the next, to the next, to
Right.
get to where they're going to go.
Yeah.
They'll overload those extension cords. They're only rated for so much. So we ask that you not do that.
Okay.
You know, don't overrate it. Use it only in appropriate places. For example, don't use an extension cord outside that's only rated for an indoor use.
But that's important.
It is. When you're doing your wiring, checking your lights, you know, there's some things you want to first make sure your Christmas lights are UL approved or some other reputable rating service.
Okay.
So UL is probably the most prevalent in our country. Very good, and you know it's a good quality source, and they've been checked. With the lights themselves, you want to make sure there's no frayed or bare wires. LEDs are great now. I mean, they pull very little energy. But the old kind, you can remember the big bulbs. They get very hot. I mean, they'll melt. Sometimes they melt the paint off. The bulbs will break, or they'll be missing bulbs. So with those lights, you want to make sure that there's no bare wires, there's no plugs or bulbs that are missing or broken. You know, a lot of
Right.
times those will break, and if you don't see them, it could start a fire. And again, don't daisy chain so many. We suggest 3 strings of lights per extension cord.
Well, that's important information to know. And today, Christmas tree lights are not very expensive.
No.
And so if you've got them and maybe they're old or they're starting, half the lights are burnt out, I just throw them away.
Replace them. It's not worth it. And if you're like me, I have a pole barn, and Christmas lights, I'll wrap them and I'll hang them, and they sit there all year, and that bend creases them and it damages the insulation on them. So you know, they're so inexpensive that it's best to go out and get new if you have any kind of questions at all.
Now, we've got a couple minutes left. We're going to have you back next week to talk about, there's a lot of things. There's space heaters. There's just a host of different things. But before we finish, talk a little bit about live Christmas trees.
Live Christmas trees are I love the smell. You go into your house, you hear the smell, or you smell it, you sense that Christmas tree. But there's a lot of things you want to think about. If you go and you cut your own, and when you bring it back to your house, you know, it's already probably scabbed over a little bit.
Right.
And a key to a safe Christmas tree is to make sure it has good water uptake. So when you get it home, before you put it in that stand, cut off an inch or so of that bottom. So when it goes into that stand and you water it, it's going to suck up that water into the tree. When you buy it, make sure that the needles are not falling off easily. That would be an indication of a dry or too dry of a tree. Make sure that they're kind of stable. Bounce it on the ground. Most Christmas tree farms have a shaker, but if you buy a cut tree somewhere that they don't necessarily, it's already wrapped, you know, you get it home, bounce it on the ground, make sure there's no too many needles falling off. Here's a fire service thing. We always say 3 feet from everything. So when you're setting your Christmas tree up, make sure it's at least 3 feet from registers, from wood stoves, from fireplaces. Don't set your Christmas tree up in your exit way.
Well, that's an important.
It's you don't think about it.
Right.
But if that tree catches fire and that's your only way out, you know, and those trees, we've all seen it on TV where when they become involved in a fire, they go like a bomb. So.
Yeah, I was surprised a few years ago after Christmas, and we have an artificial tree now, but we had live trees then, and I lived out in the country, so I just put a little match to that, and I was just amazed at how quickly that went up.
Oh, yes. And before we went on the show, I called Paul Martin, our sanitation, because you're not allowed to burn in the city. So I called him, and the city of Lancaster will pick up your Christmas trees if you set them out by the curb. There's no need to burn them. Don't burn the leaves in your stoves or the limbs.
Chief, thank you so much for being here. Time went, boy, we covered a lot of information. We're going to be back next week to talk about maybe space heaters, smoke detectors, and a host of other things. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the clock on the wall says we've got to go. Appreciate you, the viewers and listeners that join us each and every week. God bless you, and let's not forget, the reason for Christmas is the birth of Jesus Christ. Till next week, same time, same place, we'll see you right here.
These waters were woven into the culture of Native American tribes. The descendants of the early Europeans built a business here based on agriculture. And today, this unique destination in the central Ohio countryside comes to life with stories and memories centuries old. The Fairfield County Historical Parks invites you to amazing Rock Mill. Above the falls of the Hocking River Gorge, here together, nature and man have created some truly American stories that you'll want to experience with the entire family. Visit us or learn more about Rock Mill and the largest wooden water wheel in the nation at historicalparks.org.